Hello and good morning. Welcome to welcome to the Grand Campaign. I am JM, and with me as always are Josh and Richard. We're going to be talking about lessons learned. I recently had Josh and Richard and a couple of other friends come down, and we spent a weekend playing second edition D&D. We've gotten a lot of pushback online for those choices, which has been just hysterical.
I should probably talk about that because it was actually kind of fun.
But before we get into that, how are you gentlemen doing, and what's going on with you in gaming? We'll start with Josh. How's Gabbercan going?
Good. We just had a session last night, and oh God, what happened? Party managed to get hold recently. They've been defeated twice by the ghouls, the ghoul clerics, and they managed to actually get hold of one this time and interrogate it. And they had a really fun combination of the command asking a question and then trying to figure out what is the best one-word command to give it to make it answer that question. And so it was 2 in-game days of trying to cast enough zones of truth that the ghoul would fail its save against it, and enough command spell slots left to get it. But what ended up being really cool is the ghoul didn't know anything. The ghoul was operating on... So,
Players have too much magic in 5th edition.
but still just enough to know this means something. Like they take the magic spoon to the mashed potato thing that is the ghoul. This means something.
Well, the thing is that the ghoul was here on a divinely inspired mission in a place in the world where all divination magic is broken. So you always get kind of a random, you never know when the information that you get from your divination is accurate or not. The way, so one of the players likes to do tarot cards. One of the characters does tarot cards. And so in this part of the world, the way I do it is she puts out her I forget what it's called, but it deals out the cards. I tell her what each card means, and then she interprets their position. And then I have her roll an ability check. Oh, sorry, I secretly roll an ability check for her behind the screen. And so she knows what that spread means. She has no idea if it's accurate or not.
That's awesome.
And so if I roll really high for her, then I actually alter the world and my plans slightly to more fit the reading.
And if you don't, you just leave it be.
Yeah, or I change it so that it's even, or if it's really bad, I change it so that it's even worse. It's great, and she knows how the system works, and she's agreed to this. But right, so they're in a part of the world where it doesn't work, and so what they've found is that the ghouls have been trying to divine everything to find their goal, and they've been having a really hard time of it. And so all they got out of the ghoul were the bits and pieces that the ghoul had been divinely inspired with, and then they turned it into a heap of flaming tar. They really hate these ghouls, and it's great. But we ended last night with them having kind of wrapped up all of their investigations there. They were about to set off to try and find the thing that the ghouls were after, and then they heard the drum beat from the east that is this massive threat that they knew about and left in the mountains, hoping that it would stay there, and it is now on its way to the city.
Well, I think
pick up next time with that arriving.
What's awesome about that is I like how you've broken one of the core assumptions of D&D, which is that if it goes off, it works. And so magic is much more, and I realize that if Rookcat watches this, I will spark another debate on the Iconic Production Discord. But it's very Sanderson. Like, I know I input this spell, I get this result. But it sounds like your players are having fun now that there's mystery there.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, before we get into how your games are going, you had a pretty cool announcement that we made on the Iconic Production channel.
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Yeah. Okay, so there's going to be some of you, if you've been watching, you know that we've been one of the grand campaigns that I run, that I've been running for a long time, is Game Set in the World Under Starlight, and it's currently in sort of its like second generation, and we're going to publish that game. So JM and I, through Strange Owl Productions, Strange Owl Games, where JM is the line editor. So I've signed a contract, so I can talk about this in public now.
We have a website.
Yeah.
StrangeOwlGames.com has an Emboria page, right?
Yeah. So the game is going to be called Emboria, Role Playing in the World Under Starlight. We have a really cool masthead designed by Mr. Bob Crum. Yeah. And then we have a bunch of let's say we got a bunch of stuff in the works right now. So in fact, before I came over here this morning, I was working on an adventure. So we're going to be publishing, it'll be 4 books for the initial Kickstarter, which will be launching sometime, hopefully spring of 2023. Yep. And the 4 books are a core book, which will include a series of 3 linked adventures. And when I say a series of 3 linked adventures, I mean that like these 3 adventures on their own, you could make a campaign out of them. Like a decent size, maybe 8 to 20 session campaign, depending on how long you run sessions and how deep you go on certain things. So there's going to be a lot of meat. And part of the reason I'm including all of that in the core book is because this is a really specific setting that not a lot of people, it's not your normal D&D setting, etc. So people are not going to be as familiar with the world. And so part of the purpose of these adventures is to familiarize the not just the players, but also the GM with the kind of adventure and the sort of the tone and the pieces that you put together to make an adventure in the world under Starlight. So I'm really excited about those adventures. The core rules are essentially written. There's a little play testing that needs to be done, but that's all that writing's mostly done. So I'm working on the adventures right now, those first 3 adventures. And then the second book that's going to be published is going to be a campaign called Thunder of the North. It'll be a grand campaign meant to be played out over 10 years of in-game time with 20 adventures, at which point you should be able to either add more adventures in there, or you should, by the time you get to the end of it, you should have a good sense of where your Emboria is going and just continue the fun. So those are the first 2 books, and then the second 2 books are going to be the same again, but with OGL rules. So if you're one of those people who just cannot be bothered to learn, I guess I should have said, we're going to be using the Clash system for this game, which John Matthew designed, and I was originally running the World Under Starlight with a hacked set of the Tor rules, which I'm still quite proud of, by the way.
Yeah, no, those were great.
And I sort of wonder, if I could still do something with that system in some other context now that Tor First Edition is out of print. But anyway, so we were originally using a hacked version of the Tor rules, and then when I was helping you playtest Jackals, I was like, this is really cool, and I think with just a very little bit of work, we can make this a good fit for the world under Starlight. So it is the Clash system, but it's going to be different in certain ways.
Because it has to be, right?
Right, it's got to be, because so I'm a big fan of this kind of old school concept. I'm trying to remember. There was what's his name? Guy. He's the guy that does cool OSR reviews.
Ben Milton.
Questing Beast. Questing Beast, he talks about this, and I can't remember what he called the concept, but basically it's the idea that you have a light system, but then many subsystems. So this is my game design approach in general, is that the various parts of the world, like the actual mechanics, are very simple, but then the various things that you might want to do in the world are basically a series of optional mini games. So one of the things I did with Clash was to actually expand the travel rules. To make them more like I wanted travel rules to be, but also to make them a little more like travel rules where, again, I ran a lot of Tor. It was really influential for me. In Tor, travel is its own little subsystem. But then I'm also really influenced by old school hex crawls, in which overland travel is kind of its own minigame. And so I kind of took components of those things and mashed them up for the World Under Starlight. So that's one of the kind of the differences. Obviously, lots of different monsters, lots of new monsters. I think we'll have about 40 monsters or so in the core book. And some of them are like really specific monsters, which is something I'm a really big fan of, like monsters that are specific to a certain biome, a certain ecosystem. So you're not necessarily going to run into that monster in just any old place, right? But
It's got to be.
but if you go to this kind of place, like if you're in a marsh or you're in the coastlands, there are certain kinds of things that you could run into. And one of the other things, the magical treasure rules are a little bit different, things like that. So just some stuff has been altered for the setting, but still the basic Clash mechanics. But then if you are one of these people who cannot be bothered to learn something other than D&D 5th edition rules,
We'll have you covered.
I have condescended to your lowly estate. No, I'm
Way to
kidding.
sell it.
I'm sort of kidding. Really, you should really try it with Clash rules because I think it's where it really shines. But there will also be OGL rules. And when I say OGL rules, I mean that it'll be D&D 5th edition, but obviously, most of the spellcasting classes in D&D 5e would be totally unsuitable for the World Under Starlight. So I'm rewriting all of the classes.
Which will be awesome.
And
It's a lot more like Adventures in Earth's take on 5e.
Yeah. Or there was the that really cool low magic take on like third was Iron
Heroes.
Iron Heroes. Yeah. Was Monty Cook that put that together?
Monty Cook Presents put it together, but it was actually Mike Merle's one of his very first.
Yeah. So I was really influenced by that.
Love that game.
Yeah. It's really cool. And so there's some of that in here. But I'm just totally rewriting all the classes. And I'm actually really excited about it. Like after having just trashed the OGL, like the new OGL classes that I've come up with this, so I'm like, okay, this is kind of dope. Like I kind of want to see how this plays. So we're gonna have lots of playtesting.
Awesome. And we're gonna do some of the playtesting here on the Iconic channel.
Yep.
And then so starting in about February, the Strange Owl Games Patreon is going to switch over from Space 1889 into Emboria. So if you want to get access to the Emboria playtests, go over to patreon.com/strangeowlgames, join the Patreon. You get a ton of stuff for Space 1889 right now, but then you'll get to
there's going to be playtest packets, some lore. I will probably just do like random lore chats.
Yeah.
I was thinking as part of that, just like if people want to like tune in on a Saturday night and ask questions about the world, stuff like that. So I'm really excited about this, and obviously working on it a lot. I've made a bargain with myself to this is a weird little insight into the psychology of the Richard. So I made a bargain with myself between now and the end of the year, which is to do the Stephen King thing and just write 2,000 words a day, including Saturdays and Sundays. No matter what else is happening, I'm going to write at least 2,000 words because I have a lot of writing that is still got to be done. And so my reward, if I meet my 2,000 words for the day, is I get to mud.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're going to break out a multi-user dungeon. And
Yeah. I was really, I've always been really into text-based gaming. Like, so people don't know, a mud is a multi-user dungeon. It's like an MMO, but without the graphics. So we're going to
is your mind.
the graphics. They're using the most powerful graphics card of all, your imagination. So anyway, I love mudding, and this weekend, this last week, I was traveling quite a bit for work, and also like a conference, and sold some books and met some cool people. A lot of people are very excited about the game, actually.
Awesome.
So I was like, yeah. So while I was in the hotel room, when I was like, what would be cool? Mudding. And then I was like, no, I gotta write. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this is the deal with myself. Yeah. So anyway, so working on that, and a bunch of other projects that are still kind of nascent. So I'll do a quick. I haven't actually run the old school B&X game, the Axe game, real recently because I was traveling for work on the night that we would normally play. So I don't think I have a big update on that. But I also don't remember the last time I don't think I have a big update on that. But I do have a cool World Under Starlight story, which will be a nice little segue to this. So I'm running this adventure right now for my every other Monday night group in the World Under Starlight, which is sort of my involuntary playtest group. Be like, Be like,
Josh was part of my involuntary Jackals playtest.
hey guys, I have this new monster I designed. Guess what? They're on the trail of these messengers who went missing. So there's this really important rite in the world under Starlight. It's the beginning of the important New Year. It's called the Feast of Orusen, and as part of the cleansing of the water in the Feast of Orusen, there's this serpent that's usually forged out of metal, bronze, or copper, and it has to be ritually slain and buried as part of this ceremony. And so it's got to be forged in a certain way in a certain place. And so the priestess of the local shrine, the local secret well, had set off for one, and it hasn't arrived. It's getting close to the time for the ceremony, and the messengers who were supposed to, the acolytes who were supposed to bring him back have gone missing. So the party's been sent out to find them. So they know they're looking for 2 acolytes and their 2 escorts, and they've been searching through the woods. They had some difficult travel tests and ended up drinking a bunch of poisoned water. And for the very first time in my 18 years of running tabletop games, somebody had a save against diarrhea, and they failed.
Yeah, I heard this story sort of ran down the leg of the local gaming group.
Yeah.
And thanks, Josh. Yeah. I actually, fun fact, I will get to go back to Jackals. My play group my Grand Campaign group is coming back together at the end of November.
Oh, nice.
Just in time for Travelers on the Warlord Road releasing. And I'm very excited.
Excellent.
They're going into Ekiazaru, which Josh will know is my homage to Killages. And so they're probably going to die.
Probably.
All right, so let's get into
but hold on, let me just tell this one thing.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky, they'll die, yeah. That's why I was telling my players, like, death is not the worst thing I can do to you. So they come along and they find the bodies of the 2 escorts. And I'm describing how they've died and things like this, and they suddenly realize about 2 minutes into this horrifying description. I really like body horror.
Yeah, so do I.
And they about 2 minutes into this horrifying description, they realize these men are dead because they clawed their own eyes out. And they're like, oh man, this is real bad. We have a couple of people this is like pretty much their first campaign. And they're just like, oh man, this is really bad. What's going on? And then one of the players, who's totally new, this is like it's not her first campaign, but it's her first game in the world under Starlight, and it's maybe like her 3rd or 4th RPG ever. She says, I feel like we should bury them. Is there a funeral or something that we could do? Yes. And I said, yes, there is. And so I handed everyone, or we were playing online, so I sent everyone a link to the funeral rite from the first book of Odes. And one of the party members was a priestess, so she read the priestess parts, and everyone else divvied up the rest of the parts among them. And they performed this really beautiful funeral ceremony.
That's awesome. Right
there, and that was how we ended we ended the session on a cliffhanger right after that. But it was beautiful on a couple of levels, which really highlights what I love about the world under Starlight. One was that the player had no idea that this rite existed. They just felt like it probably exists given everything else that I know about the world. There's probably a funeral service. And then secondly, the players decided they would take up valuable time, both in-game and out-of-game, to just stop and do this because it was the right thing to do. Yeah. So I gave everybody an advancement after that because it was just really beautiful and really poignant. And so this is the kind of thing people can look forward to. Gaming in the world under Starlight is you don't have to make up what's a funeral going to be like, or what's going on at the temple today, or all those different things. All that stuff is going to be provided. In fact, in every adventure, there's going to be a really cool section called Ritual Notes. Nice. And that section is going to have all the rubrics for or like an explanation of any rituals that or poetry that comes up in the course of the adventure. It's going to explain this is why it's being done the way that it is. So
I can't wait. Yeah, I'm so excited to be working on this with you.
So anyway,
so we had a bunch of people come down, and I'm going to start our first question to Josh. So we're going to be talking today about the Grand Campaign, on lessons that we learned about running the Grand Campaign and running games in general from a weekend of playing 2nd edition D&D. Now, Josh, you came to D&D like 5th edition was your first game, and you were actually in the process of creating your own game called, if I may share,
provisionally called
Tealers.
Yeah, it's the word that jumped into my mind.
And because there have been you've had some clashes between, we should have a drinking game where every time one of us says clashes, between 5th edition.
There's still bourbon on the other side of the curtain there.
Yeah. And the assumptions of your game world. But we got to play 2nd edition for 3, and we say 3 days, we're talking like 9 a.m. till about 10:30 or 11 at night.
Right. It was a good 30 plus hours of gaming.
Yeah. And the group basically said after that, we're going to keep doing this for the next couple of years.
Yeah. So just like for context, before Josh gets into his take on it, we've been doing this, you and I and some other friends, we've been doing this for the last 7 years now. Mm-hmm. We get together once a year, usually in October, and we do it just like a gaming retreat for a weekend. We've done a lot of different systems. We've done 5th edition.
Yep.
We did Infinity.
Yep.
We did 13th Age.
Yep. Jackals.
We did Jackals.
Yep. Those are the 4
that we did before.
And so 2nd edition.
And now 2nd edition D&D. Yep. So, and I think of all of those, like everybody was like,
this was the best.
This is the best one. Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, 2nd edition is a little modern. You know,
I mean, it really is just 1st edition.
That whole wizard starting with read magic and a random spell. I don't know. It's a little. I don't know, man. I don't know.
So, Josh, let's start here. What was your initial takeaway? And let's just start by addressing the elephant in the room. How hard was THAC0?
THAC0 made absolutely...
Man, I have a great how hard joke, and I can't. This is a family channel.
That's right.
Dang it.
THAC0 made absolutely no sense until the first time I did it, and then it got it, and it was never a problem after that. It's not hard.
No.
It's a roundabout way of going about it, but as soon as you do it once or twice, you get it, and then it's fine. And I liked it.
Yeah, it's more difficult to explain to somebody.
Right.
Than just roll and add this number. But once you get into it.
So this is the thing that I would say about THAC0 is that it's faster to resolve a single die roll. Because the thing that a player really needs to know is, what do I need to roll to hit? Not what do I need to roll, like I need to roll this and then look at modifiers and then compare it to the AC or whatever. But just like, what do I need to roll to hit? And that's what THAC0 tells you. So if you know the AC, what you're attacking, find out, then you can always just roll very quickly and say,
you just subtract,
I hit or not.
Subtract the AC from the THAC0, and that's
right.
The number or higher in the D20.
Right.
So what were some of your key takeaways from this weekend? Now, aside from the delightful Derek, what were having come to this for kind of the first time, what kind of stood out to you in this whole, I tried to run it as like, I almost said as Gygax intended because Garibay lives rent free in my head sometimes. We didn't use a lot of the optional rules. I think the only optional rule I used was proficiencies, because basically everything in the 2nd edition book outside of classes and equipment and combat is optional.
Yeah.
And we played it pretty close to
stock.
So I'm going to turn this over to you for the next couple of minutes. Tell us your thoughts as a 5th edition GM. Lessons learned, things that you liked, and then Richard and I will jump in.
So first impression was just unequivocally better. And I think second was just better. And I think one of the things that struck me was, sure, we didn't use a lot of the optional rules, but even without the optional rules, it felt like there was a lot on my sheet, a lot of tiny boxes and numbers with very little kind of correlation or context. And I was worried about that at first until I realized in 2nd edition, you hardly ever even look at your sheet. Yeah. It's, there's a lot of minute information on it.
And we used most of it.
We used most of it, but you don't. Right, 5th edition, your face is glued to your sheet as you're trying to figure out what exactly you can do. In 2nd edition, you know what you can do. It's one thing. Each kind of round, you get to do one thing.
But it's not limited by a prescribed set of actions.
Right. There's no sense whatsoever that on my sheet is the limit of what I can do, because there's nothing on the sheet that really tells me what I can do. It has some numbers real quick that I can go, wait, hold on. Okay, that's what my short sword, that's how much damage my short sword does. But I think a lot of the fears that a 5th edition player might have is, well, then I'm limited, and I don't know how to articulate the rest of it, but I think in 2nd edition, the other thing that struck me was just how unbelievably fast combat was.
Despite the fact that we had a bunch of people at the table.
Yeah, we had, how many players was that?
We had 6 players, and most of you had hirelings by about the end of day 1.
Yeah.
You're like, oh god, we're all so close to death.
Yeah, so we had
everybody had at least 1 or 2 other people that they were running in combat.
We had basically 12 to 13 PCs on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've never played a game where I went, oh, it's my turn again? Oh my gosh, okay. Except this one. In this game with 13 PCs on the board, it got to the point where it was like, has everybody gone? And I went, oh wait, no, I haven't. It's my turn again already. What's even happening? And it was incredible. So you are getting one thing means that the rounds go very, very fast, which also means that for your one thing, you feel very free to do something stupid and in character, like dump your wine on the lich. Right? Cool. Okay. That did absolutely nothing whatsoever. And I didn't feel like I was going to be sitting here uselessly for the next 15 minutes.
Yep.
Until my next turn. So you try crazy things. And then on top of that, your characters can die at the drop of a hat. Right, and I've when I came back and people asked me what I had done, I said that I was trying to figure out how to summarize it, and I just said, well, I drank the finest of whiskeys, and I ate the finest of barbecue, and I played the finest of D&D for 3 straight days.
I love it.
And I was trying to tell my players about how
we did have some good whiskey
to be playing a character with a hit point. And they were like, yeah, but some of us care about our characters. I was like, what the hell do you mean I don't care about my characters? Right? That's not how it works.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Sir Madrith's death was the most meaningful PC death I have ever experienced. And I played him for 7 hours. That was it.
He was great.
Are you kidding me? I cared more about Derek, and he was a bastard.
For people who don't know, we ended up just using Derek's name as like to bleep other cuss words.
Yeah, it was basically like our Smurf.
Yeah,
like the longer we played, the more I realized that when somebody was like, "You Dereking Derek," I'm like, "You Smurfing Smurf." No, that works.
Right in the Derek.
I rolled a character with high charisma and just ass intelligence, and
which was also my character, by the way. We were not a smart party.
But yours had high wisdom as well.
It's true.
Yeah, Derek survived a lot. So, if I may, like Brad had a comment. One of the players had a comment, and he kept asking for breaks every couple of hours. And I found that it's like, all right, are you not having fun? Is that why you're asking for breaks? He's like, this is the most engaged I've ever been in a game ever. He's like, when I play Pathfinder 2, which he loves, I mean, we like Pathfinder, it's a great system. He's like, all I'm doing is focusing on my character sheet so that I know what my best 3 actions are the next turn. In here, I can't ever look at my character sheet because what I'm really focused on is what is going on the table. Mm-hmm. And I have to keep track of everything all at once. And he's like, and it's exhausting in a very good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, my favorite part was the fact that there were 20 PCs, 19 PCs and 1 beloved dog. And my stats for that weekend, which sounds like I was out to kill people, but I wasn't. But you guys went through 9.5 characters.
Right.
But the thing was, every death was felt, and every new character was beloved.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like a lot of the negative context of OSR games is, well, you'll never have a good character because you're just waiting. They're just going to die, and that's not the case. And those people who had 1 hit point when they hit level 2, like I have never seen Richard more excited than when his 1 hit point druid hit level 2 and he got to reroll his hit points and he got 13 hit points, 14 hit points. Like it was just this. Like you earned, there was this sense of.
I may have said a bad word. I was really excited.
He definitely said Derek at the top of his voice.
Yeah. So this is not my first OSR rodeo, although usually I'm on the other side of the DM screen. But so I come from the angle of being like a B&X DM. Mm-hmm. So B&X, basic expert D&D. That's really the sweet spot for me in the kind of across editions.
Axe, OSE.
I run Axe. I run OSE. I run sometimes like Axe with like OSE, but just give the players the OSE rules because they're laid out better and they're the same. Aside from a couple of things, but just as far as like the nice thing about like OSE. The layout in OSE, for instance, is that it like everything you need to know about how exploring a dungeon works in OSR game is all on one neat page, and so I can just like put that page down in front of somebody, and they're like, "Oh, okay. If you want to get that stuff out of the Axe book, you have to go look 4 different places." Yeah. So anyway, kudos to the OSE guys for the arrangement and the layout they did. So anyway, so like low hit point characters, not unusual, not a big deal for me. Things like that. The thing that I was a little worried about was how fiddly the 2nd edition character sheet seemed compared to the character sheets I'm used to looking at for D&D. And I was like, man, there's a lot of numbers on here. Do we really need all this stuff? And but it was fine, especially the way that you ran it. And I think the thing that I noticed is that early 2nd edition is basically very much like 1st edition or B&X.
Yeah.
Late 2nd edition is really close to 3rd edition. So when you say 2nd edition D&D, there's actually a huge spectrum of, like, you could say play experiences there. But you ran it, very close to stock, which is what I really enjoy.
I wasn't going to bring in any of the player option books. I love them, but they're basically the prelude to 3rd edition.
Right. Yeah. So what I loved, kind of in no particular order. Again, I don't usually get to play in this kind of game. Usually I'm running it, so it was really fun. I love that the battles felt like battles. In 3rd edition, or not 3rd edition, in 13th Age, which is what we did the last 2 years, the battles never really felt like battles.
They felt like set pieces.
Right. It felt like set pieces, but it also felt like, okay, I'm just, like, here's my thing, and I'm waiting for everybody else to finish their thing so I can do my thing. Everyone's turn takes several minutes, because everybody's got all these different things that chain together, and it's not my favorite play experience. I enjoy the game. Obviously, I enjoy the company. I'll play anything if it's with good people, but it was not my favorite play experience. And so what I really loved here is that the battles really felt like battles, as in man, I don't even know how to express this, but it was much more like we're a cohort, we're a legion, we're people who fight alongside each other because we need each other. Mm-hmm. And that was the other thing that I think that really stood out to me, is that 5th edition characters, or like modern D20 characters, are like so complete. Mm-hmm. Whereas these characters are much more you're more fragile in one sense. You can also actually do more. So it's like it's just like a flatter playing field, I would say, because you are more fragile, but also the monsters are more fragile. Everything just has less hit points, right? Much easier for a group of level 1 characters to take out a Knoll, right, in this game than in 5th edition, where everything has been theoretically balanced so that, every fight takes a certain number of rounds. There's nothing like that There's no game has been balanced so that fights take a certain number of rounds. You do your preparation, and then you try to make the fight as unfair in your favor as possible. Mm-hmm. And so there was that one big fight with with all the goblins and the gnolls, and that we sort of like got pinned between 2 different directions. that's my favorite fight of the weekend, because it really felt like okay, we screwed up here because somebody knocked on the door loudly. Josh.
That's the scene where that's the battle where so mad at the time.
Yes. But at the same time, it's my favorite battle because it just felt like everybody was pulling everything out, and it felt like an extremely dangerous situation, and we were able to like walk away from it. And most of us were able to walk away.
I think you have 2 PCs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I stressed that at the beginning. In older games, combat is war. It's not sport.
Yeah. That's exactly what it feels like. This is war. This is not, a game with rules. This is how can you win? And I do want to address the character thing because when I kind of like live Facebook. I don't know. I don't do Twitter. But like I was on Facebook like throughout the game, like taking pictures of each battle, because we had a bunch of dope minis.
Yeah.
This is also like I think our miniature game was most on point this year, because obviously you've got a ton of great stuff in here, but then also everybody brought their own. And when I say everybody brought their own, I mean most of us knew, like having played this kind of game before, we knew there's going to be like, I might go through 6 characters, or I might just want to have 6 characters on the board. That's also a possibility. And so I painted 6 minis, and I rolled them up ahead of time, and I rolled Derek on the hit points. So my first guy was Elf Fighter. He had 3 hit points. He died, gravely misunderstanding the kind of trap he was dealing with. That's on me. I thought it was like a tilty kind of a thing, and I didn't think to look up. So yeah, that one's on me. And then I had this.
We had learned to look up by the
end. Yeah. And then after that character was my druid, and my druid at level 1 had 1 hit point. And druids they're not a great class in 2nd edition D&D in terms of what you can do at low levels. High levels they're pretty boss, but at low levels. But I'd done the shapeshifter kit, so I could like turn into very small animals, which is not great for damage, but it turned out to be really useful for dungeon exploration. And so I would turn into a little bat and fly around and explore the dungeon ahead of people, and that was really useful. But so that character had 1 hit point, and then when he hit level 2, he got way beefier, got up to 14, and then kind of averaged out as he went up. But the thing that I always tell my players when we're playing like Axe, when we're playing old school D&D, is that levels 1 to 3 are your backstory levels. So this is, and I think this is the shift. Talking about like caring about your characters, right? I was really invested in my, by the end of the campaign, I had a character and then a hireling, right? I had my shapeshifter druid, and then I had a dwarven fighter hireling, Bretir the Strong, who I really like. He's a pretty cool character. He's a evil bashing mace, which is fun. I love old school magic items. Too.
They're
awesome. It's just a normal mace unless you're fighting something evil, which is most of what we were fighting, and then it's magic. But here's the thing about caring about your characters. Okay, 5th edition D&D and like modern 13th Age is the same way, right? Assumes at level 1 your character is already special and important.
Yeah, and Pathfinder too, like modern F20 games.
Yeah, all modern F20 games assume your character is special and important going in. In old school games, you have the potential to become special and important.
And the difference is, I heard it once, and I loved this, is that in modern games, you start off special and you end as Superman.
Yeah.
In old school games, you start as the orphan and you end as Batman.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly it. Yeah.
You're not going to end with I'm laser beams.
But the other thing is you got to understand, like by the time you hit about level 4, which I think my druid was the only character who actually hit level 4 by the end of the campaign. By the time you hit level 4, like you're pretty dope. Like by the time you're level 4, you have you have options. You have things you can take a couple of hits. You're not invincible, but like even like level 3, level 4 in an OSR game, like once you make it to that point, your character becomes pretty survivable. Hopefully, because you've learned how to play this kind of game by that point. So really, it's just getting through levels 1 to 3. And I guess the other thing I would say, since this is the grand campaign, like what made this game really qualify as a grand campaign, and the way that we've laid it out. So what I would say for me is obviously we were playing played like 30 hours straight, which is the equivalent of like 10 to 15 sessions, right? If you were just playing this weekly at your table. The thing that really the thing that really made it feel like a grand campaign was the multi-generational aspect of it. So basically we started with a party, and
No one from that original party is alive.
no one from that original party is alive, but they did things and they were important enough that their names have been passed down, right? So our leader was Lieutenant Howe, who was a former military commander, and so we became eventually we became Howe's heroes. And at some point, I think that my character might be the only one in the party who knew the first generation, because he came in really early on when the rest of the first generation was around. So like my character, Kelligorm, he's like the connective tissue between that first generation and the second and third generation characters that have come in. But it has the effect of being a more, I think Ben said it well. It was if this was a show, this would be Band of Brothers, right? Where you have like a group, and it's the story's about the group. It's not necessarily about one individual character. It's a story about the group, and the people come in and people leave, but there's a sort of ship of Theseus kind of a thing going on. And that had the cool effect that, we could show up places and people would be like, oh, you're Hal's heroes. We've heard of you.
Yeah.
And the deeds of our previous characters, like the earlier members of the party, those would kind of live on and, kind of build a legend. And so in that sense, it felt like you're part of a community that you're contributing to, not just I'm, the sort of Nietzschean, like, protagonist.
Yeah. And so I'll come back to that in a second, but I want to go back to Josh's comment about the freedom to do something stupid, which I loved.
Yeah.
But also, it allowed me to be, I don't want to say, so when you design encounters and you design things for modern games, there's this tendency to want to ensure, one, that everyone has something to do and that things are balanced. You don't want to have something that causes, and this is not something that I've ever, looking back to our very first, second TBK, where, sorry guys, you ate Dragon Hearts, you don't get to play this final encounter until you make your save. You were on the side of the bad guy. Player agency is both for good and ill in my games. Yeah. But there was one of my favorite moments was the group came to this cauldron that had stew in it and a magical ladle that was stirring, and Josh was like, well, I go grab the handle the ladle to kind of get it to stop stirring, and he was enchanted and started spinning faster.
So what you said was, it is starting to boil over.
Yes.
And
that's
I decided, well, that's probably bad. And so I can push it over, or I can try and stir it and prevent it from boiling over. So that was the thought. And that's a really cleverly designed object.
Why, thank you. And every time every round, Derek wasn't doing anything but stirring the pot, and the pot would spawn kobolds, and then the more kobolds it spawned, it started spawning dark stalkers, and the group was like, crap, we have to get... But I didn't worry about, well, Josh won't get to do anything. Because one, and this goes back to something that Josh and I love, Professor Dungeon Master, if you don't go to his channel, it's awesome. He says, the more you break down combat into segmented rounds,
right,
the longer everything takes. So we played group initiative, which was start of every round, which side gets to go first, and everyone on one side gets to go first, and then everyone on the other side.
Yeah.
And it added a lot of vagaries of war into that, because
if you could go twice in a row as a party, that was,
or if the bad
that's more often happened when the bad guys get to go twice in a row. That's why Sir Madrith died. Is because he suffered 2 full rounds of attack.
Yep. Yeah. So in my Axe game, we have about 10 players.
Yeah.
And then obviously people can have hirelings. So there's a potential that you could have 30 PCs on the board at any given time. So the way I've been handling initiative, I like the way that you did it, and I might switch to that. The way that I've been handling initiative is just setting up by marching order. So if you want to go first, you stand in front.
Yeah.
Set it by marching order, and then only roll initiative for the bad guys.
Oh.
And then place the initiative is a D6 roll, right?
Yeah.
So one means the bad guy goes at the end, 6 means he goes at the start, and anything in the middle, he goes somewhere in the middle of the rest of the party.
Yeah.
So that's how I've been doing it, which I think is also a fine way. But not rolling for initiative every round. Like I like well, in acts like rules as written, you actually would re-roll initiative every round, and it's just with 10 people.
But it's still by side in X, isn't it?
No, it's just like roll initiative every round. I could be wrong, but anyway.
Yeah.
So this is the way I've been doing it, and yeah, I think that things like that are really important to kind of keep the pace going a little bit. But also, it's like whatever the initiative. What I did like about the group initiative is that it would come around to somebody with really low decks, and we all be this guy.
Yeah.
Oh man,
It's totally going to be not. We're not going first this time. But then sometimes they would have the great roll.
Yeah.
And the group cheered.
Yeah.
And I think, like as Richard said, and as Josh kind of added in here, that like why we're talking about this on the Grand Campaign is not just the fact that we wanted to be like, haha, we had a great weekend of gaming. Let's use our platform to just be like, ooh, this was so much fun.
it was fun though.
It was so much fun.
I've got dice in the car. Like if JM was like, let's play some 2E right now, I would just go get my dice and just throw down.
Which, speaking of which, Josh, I'm not even going to edit this out. We're looking for a date. Jump on the Discord because we're looking for a date to play in November, and I got the monk already put in. Like I built the monk for you. So Jared,
Excellent.
I think I'm good for any of those dates, but I need to get my stuff put in. Yeah.
So it's again. So we've talked about the core idea of the Grand Campaign is this idea of community, right? And again, I love modern games. Like I'm reading through Conan, and actually, Conan, the role-playing game, probably fits more.
Is that the
2D20
2D21
where like everyone is
Conan,
Conan,
that game,
right? Everyone's Conan.
Yeah.
Is the idea. It makes sense for that genre, but we have this, as Josh was pointing out. Well, why would you play this game? Because you wouldn't love your character? We love our characters, and it's like. It's not the individual.
Don't understand.
It's the community.
Yeah.
And that's the key. That's the heart of the Grand Campaign
Yeah.
is playing in, building, and expanding a community.
But to do this, to get this experience, you have to put the work in. And this is the thing. Like modern games try to make you feel that way about your character at the start without putting effort into it. And one of the effects that this can sometimes have is to create a feeling of entitlement from the players. I have felt this playing 5th edition. Where like, because I've read the DMG and I know encounter math and all these different things, and I'd be like, okay, well, let's see. I'm trying to, and I'm not saying everyone does this is just my brain. It's like, well, the DMG says we get this many encounters per day, and this one seems we get 2 mediums and 1 hard or whatever. Like, and so, that's like, so I'm saying, okay, so I'm entitled to this many encounters, which means I'm going to use my resources kind of this way. And you don't have, not that we didn't have these moments in our 5th edition game, but you don't have as many of these moments where you're like, well, Derek, I'm going to try something. And, because you're like, you can afford to be like more cagey because the game has sort of promised you that you're going to get these things. And as a DM, you can decide, screw it, I'm going to ignore encounter math and things like that. But at the same time, like if you do that, you're kind of like,
you gotta let your players know.
That's a thing. Yeah. Because like you can kind of like it can be kind of unfair to your players who signed up to play a game of 5th edition and like you're running something else at that point.
Yeah,
so
100%.
So that's the thing. And so so if you go this approach, which you can go with 2nd edition, you can do this. You could even do this. You could do this with. I used to run a Pathfinder game where you only had levels 1 to 5. I forget what this is. I found this on a Pathfinder forum way back in the day, like back when there was just Pathfinder. There's no 2E. I forget what it was called, but it's a playstyle where basically you only level up as far as 5th level, and then from that point on, anytime you level up, you get a new feat. But you don't get more hit points, you don't get more spells, things like that. So like you stop at 5th level, and then you get feats after that, which had the ability, the effect of creating some kind of like dangerous world, But this, if you want to get this effect, like you have to actually put the time in, which means you're going to have to go through some sessions, especially if you're not. I mean, the nice thing about what we were doing is we played like 30 hours straight. So you have the potential to like you can like go through the stages of grief very quickly, as you're detoxing from modern game design. Um, I don't want to sound like I'm just dumping on modern game design, because obviously I am a modern game designer, but like,
and we love it. Like,
sure, right, yeah, but it's just a different thing, and but you have to be willing. All I'm trying to say is like you got to be willing to put the work in. You got to be willing to kind of like set aside your like I'm entitled to this play experience. Set that aside and just say, all right, I got 1 hit point.
Let's see what happens.
And let's see what happens. And it's sort of like it's interesting, because what ends up happening is that on the one hand you're like, well, I've only got 1 hit point, so if this guy dies, I just roll up another one. On the other hand, the longer that guy with 1 hit point survives, the more you're like, okay, buddy, I'm rooting for you, I'm rooting for you, I'm rooting for you. And you've got really invested in that character. And but you got to be willing to just like put the work in and know that things are going to suck for a little bit, but also it's going to cause you to look outside of your character sheet and start figuring out how do I like what's this? We got to come up with a solution that's something other than just, well, I've run out of daily abilities, let's sleep now. Like it's not going to fly in this style of game. Like you got to be a little more creative than that. So,
all right, Josh. We're getting close to our end time, so I wanted to ask you one final question. What are you bringing back from 2E to Geberkamp?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's a pretty simple answer. Is I'm pretty sure I'm going to stop trying to back design 5th edition, and I'm just going to scrap my player's guide, start with 2nd, and build from that.
Yes.
I think that would save me a lot more work, because Jam, every time I run a new alteration past you, you always send me some older system that says, yeah, they did that kind of thing here. So apparently it would just be much more efficient for me to go back, start with an older system, and build that into Geberkamp, because I think it's closest to what I'm trying to make.
Well, and I would say that one of my favorite quotes from John Wick, the game designer, not the assassin. I mean, he might be an assassin as well, but not the Keanu Reeves movie character.
You killed my dog. That's the only thing I can remember John Wick ever saying. I can remember lots of sweet moves he did.
Yeah, but that's the only thing.
Killing people with a horse.
That was so great. So John Wick, the game designer, I always feel weird that I have to qualify that now. He said, if you come up with a great idea in gaming, Greg Stafford did it 30 years ago and probably explained it better. And it's true. Like, Stafford's game design, like Pendragon and, RuneQuest, but that's not a bad thing. I always feel bad when somebody's like, hey, I did this. And I was like, oh, cool. So did you read this game? Oh, no, it's not new. Like, it doesn't have to be new.
Well, and this, to me, I like it because it's just confirmation that I had a good idea.
Yeah. Because great minds think alike. Right. So if you come to that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I realize this was a strange grand campaign. Next month, when we get together, we're going to talk about, Richard's got some new ways to organize a grand campaign that we're going to talk about. I'm going to let him make the outline, if that's all right.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll
it's going to basically be the outline for the Thunder in the North campaign book, because Thunder in the North campaign book, aside from being a grand campaign, is also going to have instructions and tools for running it as a grand campaign, which will be kind of a cool thing. It's the one thing that Darkening of Mirkwood, or even the original version of the Great Pendragon campaign, could have used, right? Because it's really like a tradition that you're handing down here that a lot of people may not be in on, and so I figured a lot of that stuff out kind of the hard way, and so I'm going to try to codify it a little bit.
Nice. Excellent. Well, Josh, Richard, thank you so much, guys. We're going to have the podcast will be live in a week, and I got to do last month's. I forgot to upload that podcast. So to all of our viewers who are like, where's episode 7? That's on me. And we'll be back in a month with more Grand Campaign. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and I will talk to you all later. Have a good one.